Welcome to Toxic from Reddit, where real toxic relationship stories come to life. Here you'll hear true stories from people who experience toxic relationships from different perspectives. Partners dealing with cheating, manipulation, gaslighting, red flags, and all the emotional chaos that comes with loving someone who hurts you. Stories of betrayal, of finding strength to leave, of discovering the truth, of heartbreak, of healing, and the raw reality of toxic love. This is a real story, shared anonymously on Reddit. Some details have been changed to protect the identity of the people involved. Hi everyone, my name is Rebecca. I'm 36 years old and I live in Nashville, Tennessee. And I need to tell you about the most devastating and life-altering secret that was revealed to me just 6 weeks ago, which is that my mother-in-law called me to her hospital bedside as she was dying from cancer and confessed that my husband of 12 years is not the biological father of our twin daughters, that my husband's identical twin brother is actually their biological father, that my mother-in-law and father-in-law have known this secret for the entire 11 years of my daughters' lives, that they helped cover up what happened and convinced me that my husband was the father, that my husband's twin brother assaulted me while I was unconscious at a family party 11 years ago, which is how I got pregnant, and that my entire family has been living a lie for over a decade, and now I'm dealing with the impossible situation of having to tell my husband that the children he's raised and loved are actually his brother's children, having to protect my daughters from this horrific truth, and having to come to terms with the fact that I was assaulted, and that assault resulted in my children. I'm going to tell you this entire story from the beginning because the level of deception and the conspiracy to hide the truth is so massive and involves so many people that you need to understand how an entire family can keep a secret this devastating for over a decade. My husband's name is Daniel. He's 37 years old and we've been married for 12 years. And he's been an amazing father to our twin daughters who are now 11 years old. Daniel has an identical twin brother named Derek, and they're so identical that even after knowing them for years, I sometimes have trouble telling them apart if I'm not paying close attention. My mother-in-law's name was Patricia, and she passed away 4 weeks ago from pancreatic cancer. And it was on her deathbed that she revealed this secret that has destroyed everything I thought I knew about my family. I met Daniel 13 years ago when I was 23 years old and working as a nurse at a hospital in Nashville. Daniel came into the emergency room one night with a broken arm from a basketball accident, and I was one of the nurses who treated him. Daniel and I hit it off immediately, and he asked for my phone number before he left the hospital, and I gave it to him. We started dating, and I quickly fell in love with Daniel because he was kind, funny, responsible, and caring. About 2 months into our relationship, Daniel introduced me to his family, including his parents, Patricia and Robert, and his identical twin brother, Derek. I was shocked when I met Derek because Daniel had mentioned that he had a twin brother, but I hadn't realized they were identical twins. Derek and Daniel looked exactly alike. They had the same face, the same build, the same voice, and even many of the same mannerisms. The only way I could tell them apart was that Daniel had a small scar on his left eyebrow from a childhood accident, and Derek didn't have that scar. When I first met Derek, I thought he seemed nice enough, but there was something about him that made me uncomfortable, like he would stare at me a little too long, or he would make comments that seemed slightly inappropriate. I mentioned this to Daniel, and Daniel said that Derek had always been the more outgoing and flirtatious twin, and that I shouldn't take his behavior personally. Daniel explained that he and Derek had very different personalities despite being identical twins. Like Daniel was more serious and responsible, while Derek was more impulsive and reckless. Daniel said that Derek had struggled with alcohol and had made some poor decisions in his life, but that he was family and Daniel loved him. Daniel and I continued dating, and after about a year, Daniel proposed to me, and I said yes. We got married in a beautiful ceremony in Nashville, and Derek was Daniel's best man at the wedding. At the wedding reception, Derek gave a toast where he made some jokes that I thought were inappropriate. Like he joked about how he had met me first, since he and Daniel are identical and I couldn't tell them apart. And he joked about how lucky Daniel was to have found someone like me. I felt uncomfortable during Derek's toast, but everyone else seemed to think it was funny, so I tried to laugh it off. After Daniel and I got married, we settled into our life together, and everything was wonderful. I continued working as a nurse, and Daniel worked as an engineer at a manufacturing company. We bought a house in a nice neighborhood in Nashville, and we started talking about having children. About a year after we got married, Daniel's parents, Patricia and Robert, hosted a big family party at their house to celebrate their 35th wedding anniversary. The party was on a Saturday evening, and there were probably about 50 people there, including extended family members, friends, and neighbors. I remember that I was having a good time at the party. I was talking with Daniel's relatives and enjoying the food and the music. I also remember that I was drinking wine at the party, which I didn't normally do very much because I'm a lightweight when it comes to alcohol. I remember having maybe 2 or 3 glasses of wine over the course of several hours. which shouldn't have been enough to make me drunk, but I started feeling very dizzy and disoriented. I remember telling Daniel that I wasn't feeling well, and I remember Daniel helping me upstairs to one of the guest bedrooms so I could lie down. And then I don't remember anything else from that night. The next thing I remember is waking up the next morning in the guest bedroom, still fully clothed, with Daniel sitting in a chair next to the bed. Daniel said that I had passed out and had slept through the rest of the party, and he had stayed with me to make sure I was okay. I felt terrible. I had a splitting headache and I felt nauseous. And I was embarrassed that I had gotten so drunk at Daniel's parents' party. Daniel was very sweet and understanding, and he said that it wasn't a big deal and that everyone understood that I hadn't been feeling well. We went home that day, and I spent the rest of the weekend recovering from what I thought was just a bad hangover. But over the next few weeks, I started feeling sick in the mornings, and I started having other symptoms that made me think I might be pregnant. I took a pregnancy test, and it was positive, and I was shocked because Daniel and I had been using protection, and we weren't actively trying to get pregnant yet. I told Daniel about the pregnancy, and he was surprised but also excited, and we decided that even though it wasn't planned, we were ready to become parents. I went to my doctor to confirm the pregnancy, and the doctor did an ultrasound and told me that I was actually pregnant with twins. I was shocked and overwhelmed but also excited about the idea of having 2 babies. Based on the ultrasound and the dates, the doctor estimated that I had gotten pregnant around the time of Daniel's parents' anniversary party, which made sense based on my menstrual cycle. Daniel and I told our families about the pregnancy, and everyone was excited, including Patricia and Robert and Derek. I remember that Patricia seemed very emotional when we told her about the pregnancy, and she hugged me and said that she was so happy for us. I thought at the time that she was just excited about becoming a grandmother, but now I realize that she was probably feeling guilty about what had happened. My pregnancy was relatively normal, although carrying twins was physically challenging. Daniel was incredibly supportive throughout the pregnancy, and he came to all of my doctor's appointments and helped me prepare for the babies. I gave birth to our twin daughters 11 years ago, and we named them Emma and Olivia. They were beautiful, healthy babies, and Daniel and I were overjoyed to be parents. As Emma and Olivia grew, I started noticing that they didn't really look like Daniel, like they had different facial features and different coloring, but I didn't think too much of it because I assumed they must have gotten their looks from my side of the family. Daniel never said anything about the girls not looking like him, and he was completely devoted to them. He was an amazing father who was involved in every aspect of their lives. Over the years, I would sometimes notice that Emma and Olivia actually looked more like Derek than they looked like Daniel. But since Derek and Daniel are identical twins, I thought it made sense that the girls might resemble their uncle. I never suspected that anything was wrong, and I never had any reason to doubt that Daniel was the biological father of our daughters. Our family life was happy and normal. Like we had our challenges like any family, but overall we were doing well. Daniel and I both worked. The girls were doing well in school, and we had a good support system with our extended family. Derek was around occasionally for family events, but he had moved to Atlanta for work several years ago, so we didn't see him very often. When we did see Derek at family gatherings, I still felt uncomfortable around him, but I couldn't really explain why. Derek would sometimes make comments about how much Emma and Olivia looked like him, and he would joke about how they must have gotten the good looks from his side of the family. I thought these comments were weird, but I didn't think too much of them. About 2 months ago, Patricia was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer, and the doctor said that she probably only had a few weeks to live. Patricia declined rapidly, and she was admitted to the hospital for palliative care. Our entire family was devastated, and we all spent as much time as possible at the hospital with Patricia. Daniel was especially heartbroken because he was very close to his mother, and it was difficult for him to watch her suffer. About 6 weeks ago, I was at the hospital visiting Patricia, and she asked if she could speak to me alone. Daniel and Robert and Derek had stepped out to get coffee, so it was just Patricia and me in the hospital room. Patricia looked at me with tears in her eyes, and she said, "Rebecca, I need to tell you something. I've been carrying this secret for 11 years, and I can't die without telling you the truth." I was confused, and I said, "What are you talking about, Patricia?" Patricia took my hand and she said, "The night of our anniversary party 11 years ago, something terrible happened, and we covered it up, and I've regretted it every day since." I felt a sense of dread, and I said, "What happened?" Patricia said, "You didn't just pass out from drinking too much wine that night. Derek put something in your drink, he drugged you, and after Daniel brought you upstairs to the guest bedroom, and then came back downstairs to the party, Derek went upstairs and he assaulted you while you were unconscious." I felt like the room was spinning, and I couldn't breathe, and I said, "What are you saying? That's not possible." Patricia was crying, and she said, "I'm so sorry, Rebecca. I found Derek coming out of the guest bedroom that night, and I knew something was wrong. I went into the room and I saw that your clothes were disheveled, and I confronted Derek, and he admitted what he had done. I said, "Why didn't you call the police? Why didn't you tell me?" Patricia said, "I should have. I know I should have, but Derek begged me not to. He said it would destroy the family, and Robert and I made the terrible decision to cover it up. We told Derek to leave the party immediately, and we didn't tell anyone what had happened." I was sobbing, and I said, "And then I got pregnant." Patricia nodded, and she said, "When you told us you were pregnant a few weeks later, I knew immediately that there was a possibility that Derek was the father, but I didn't say anything because I didn't want to destroy your marriage to Daniel." Patricia said, "I convinced myself that maybe Daniel was the father, and that everything would be okay, but as Emma and Olivia grew up, it became more and more obvious that they looked like Derek, not like Daniel, and I've known for years that Derek is their biological father, but I couldn't bring myself to tell you. I felt like my entire world was collapsing, and I said, 'Does Daniel know?' Patricia said, 'No, Daniel doesn't know. He has no idea. He thinks the girls are his biological children, and Derek knows the truth, and Robert knows the truth, but we all agreed to never tell anyone.' I said, 'How could you keep this from me for 11 years? How could you let me believe that Daniel was the father when you knew that I had been assaulted and that Derek was the father?' Patricia said, 'I know it was wrong. I know I should have told you the truth from the beginning, but I was trying to protect Daniel, and I was trying to protect the family, and I made a terrible mistake, and I'm so sorry.' Patricia said, 'I'm telling you now because I'm dying, and I can't take this secret to my grave. You deserve to know the truth, and you need to decide what to do with this information.' I left the hospital room and I went to my car and I sat there for over an hour just crying and trying to process what Patricia had just told me. I felt violated. I felt betrayed. I felt angry. And I felt completely lost. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know if I should tell Daniel. I didn't know if I should confront Derek. And I didn't know how this was going to affect my daughters. I eventually drove home, and when I got there, Daniel could tell that something was wrong, and he asked me what had happened. I told Daniel that I needed some time to process something that Patricia had told me, and that I would talk to him about it soon. Over the next few days, I was in a complete fog. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, and I couldn't focus on anything. I kept thinking about what Patricia had told me, and I kept trying to figure out what to do. I decided that I needed to know for certain whether Derek was actually the biological father of Emma and Olivia, because I didn't want to blow up my entire family based on a deathbed confession that might not even be true. I secretly ordered DNA testing kits online, and I collected DNA samples from Daniel, from Emma, from Olivia, and from myself. I also managed to get a DNA sample from Derek by taking a drinking glass that he had used at a family gathering and that I had saved. I sent all of the samples to a DNA testing lab, and I waited for the results. The results came back 2 weeks later, and they confirmed what Patricia had told me, like Daniel is not the biological father of Emma and Olivia, and Derek is their biological father. I felt sick when I saw the results, because part of me had been hoping that Patricia was wrong, or that she was confused because of her illness. But the DNA results were definitive, and I could no longer deny the truth. I knew that I had to tell Daniel, but I didn't know how to tell him that the children he had raised and loved for 11 years were not biologically his, and that they were the result of his brother assaulting me. I waited until Patricia passed away, which happened about 4 weeks ago, because I didn't want to add to Daniel's grief while his mother was dying. After Patricia's funeral, I asked Daniel if we could talk, and I told him everything. I told him about Patricia's deathbed confession, about what Derek had done to me at the anniversary party, about the DNA test results, and about the fact that Emma and Olivia are biologically Derek's children. Daniel's reaction was devastating to watch, like he went through shock, denial, anger, and grief all at once. Daniel said, "This can't be true. My mother wouldn't have kept something like this from us, and Derek wouldn't have done something like that." I showed Daniel the DNA test results, and I showed him the documentation of everything that Patricia had told me. Daniel broke down crying, and he said, "Those are my daughters. I've raised them. I've loved them. They're mine." I said, "I know, Daniel. You're their father in every way that matters, but I needed you to know the truth." Daniel said, "I'm going to kill Derek. I'm going to find him, and I'm going to kill him for what he did to you." I said, "I understand that you're angry. I'm angry too. But we need to think about Emma and Olivia, and we need to figure out how to handle this in a way that protects them." Daniel and I spent the next several days talking about what to do, and we decided that we needed to confront Derek and get his side of the story, even though we already knew the truth. We called Derek and asked him to come to Nashville to meet with us, and we told him that we needed to talk to him about something important. Derek came to our house a few days later, and Daniel and I sat him down and told him that we knew what he had done. Derek initially tried to deny it, but when we told him that Patricia had confessed everything on her deathbed, and that we had DNA test results proving that he was the biological father of Emma and Olivia, Derek finally admitted the truth. Derek said, "I'm sorry. I was drunk that night, and I made a terrible mistake." Daniel lunged at Derek and grabbed him by the shirt, and he said, "You didn't make a mistake. You drugged my wife, and you assaulted her. And then you let me raise your children for 11 years without telling me the truth." I had to pull Daniel off of Derek, because I was afraid that Daniel was going to seriously hurt him. Derek was crying, and he said, "I know what I did was unforgivable. I've lived with the guilt every day for the past 11 years. I wanted to tell you the truth so many times, but my parents convinced me to stay quiet." Daniel said, "Get out of my house and don't ever come near my family again." Derek left, and Daniel and I haven't spoken to him since. Daniel and I have been trying to figure out how to move forward, and we've been seeing a therapist both individually and as a couple. The therapist has been helping us process the trauma and the betrayal, and has been helping us figure out how to protect Emma and Olivia from this situation. Daniel and I have decided that we're not going to tell Emma and Olivia the truth about their biological father, at least not right now while they're still young. We've decided that Daniel is their father in every way that matters, and that they don't need to know about the circumstances of their conception. We may tell them the truth when they're older and better able to understand and process it, but for now we're going to protect them from this knowledge. Daniel has been struggling with his feelings about Emma and Olivia. Like, he loves them completely, and he knows that they're his daughters. But he's also been having intrusive thoughts about the fact that they're biologically Derek's children. The therapist has been helping Daniel work through these feelings, and has been reassuring him that biology doesn't determine parenthood, and that he's been their father since the day they were born. I've been struggling with my own feelings about what happened to me, like I've had to come to terms with the fact that I was assaulted, and that I didn't even know it happened. I've had to come to terms with the fact that my children are the result of that assault, even though I love them more than anything in the world. I've also been struggling with feelings of anger toward Patricia and Robert for covering up what happened and for keeping this secret for so many years. I understand that Patricia felt guilty, and that's why she confessed on her deathbed, but I'm angry that she didn't tell me the truth 11 years ago, when I could have made informed decisions about my life and my family. I'm angry that Robert still hasn't apologized or acknowledged what he did by covering up Derek's crime. I'm angry that an entire family conspired to keep this secret from me and from Daniel, and that we've been living a lie for over a decade. Daniel and I have talked about whether we should report Derek to the police for what he did, but we've been told by lawyers that it would be very difficult to prosecute a case from 11 years ago, especially since I have no memory of the assault, and the only evidence is Patricia's deathbed confession and the DNA test results. We've also been told that if we did report Derek and the case went to trial, Emma and Olivia would likely find out the truth about their conception, which is something we're trying to avoid. So we've decided, at least for now, not to pursue criminal charges against Derek, although we've made it clear to him that if he ever tries to contact us or our daughters, we will go to the police. Daniel and I have also had to figure out our relationship with Robert, Daniel's father, because Robert was complicit in covering up what Derek did. Daniel has told Robert that he's extremely angry and disappointed, and that their relationship may never recover from this betrayal. Robert has apologized, but he's also tried to justify his actions by saying that he was trying to protect the family and that he didn't want to see Derek go to prison. Daniel has told Robert that protecting Derek was more important to him than protecting me or telling the truth, and that's something that Daniel can't forgive. I've been thinking a lot about Emma and Olivia, and about how this situation affects them even though they don't know about it. I look at my daughters and I see the children that I love more than anything in the world, and I also see a reminder of the worst thing that ever happened to me. It's a complicated and painful mix of emotions, and I've been working with my therapist to process these feelings. My therapist has helped me understand that Emma and Olivia are not responsible for the circumstances of their conception, and that they deserve to be loved and cherished regardless of how they came into this world. My therapist has also helped me understand that it's okay to have complicated feelings about this situation, and that I don't have to have everything figured out right away. I've been thinking about other women who might be in similar situations, who might have been assaulted without knowing it, or who might have children as a result of assault, or who might have family members who covered up crimes to protect the family. I want to tell these women that what happened to them is not their fault, and that they deserve to know the truth about their own lives. I want to tell them that it's okay to be angry at the people who kept secrets from them, even if those people thought they were protecting them. I want to tell them that biology doesn't determine parenthood, and that the person who raised and loved their children is their children's real parent, regardless of DNA. I want to tell them that healing is possible, even from something this devastating, and that therapy can help them process their trauma and their complicated feelings. And I want to tell them that they have the right to make their own decisions about how to handle their situation, whether that means reporting the assault to police, telling their children the truth, or keeping the information private to protect their family. Thank you for reading my story. And if you've been through something similar, if you've discovered that your children were conceived through assault, if you've had family members cover up a crime, if you've had to decide whether to tell your children difficult truths about their conception, or if you've had to rebuild your family after a devastating revelation, I would love to hear how you dealt with it and where you are now. I'm still healing from this experience, still processing the trauma and the betrayal, still working on my relationship with Daniel, and still figuring out how to be the best mother I can be to Emma and Olivia. But I'm grateful that I finally know the truth, even though the truth is painful. And I'm grateful for Daniel, who has stood by me and who continues to be an amazing father to our daughters regardless of biology.